Thank you very much. Yes, so good afternoon, everybody. My name is Peter Duffy. And as Ravi's just hinted, really, I'm here to tell you how easy it is to actually become a whistleblower, even without realizing it, and how easily everything you've achieved in your adult life can be destroyed as a consequence. So I'd spent many years whistleblowing internally. However, it was the death of this gentleman, Peter Reid, that led me to the Care Quality Commission. So Peter died of a stroke and urosepsis due to delays in changing his overdue left ureteric stent. I'd seen him myself on Boxing Day 2014 to discuss expediting the stent change with his family, and he developed the first signs of sepsis late that night. Despite being referred to the on-call urologist on the Saturday morning, there was no imaging and no intervention until the following Tuesday, when I discovered what had happened, and although I wasn't on call, arranged an urgent scan and Peter's emergency addition to my elective list. However, I was too late. Peter's case was never discussed in our morbidity and mortality meeting. But in early summer, I was summoned to the inevitable inquest, being asked if the 3-day delay in emergency intervention was acceptable. Well, of course it wasn't. The coroner ordered, in front of the bereaved family, a departmental M&M discussion with a summary to be passed back to her. The two on-call colleagues for the 3-day lapse, one of whom was the M&M lead, refused the coroner's order. The Trust then hurriedly commissioned a root cause analysis from which the whole department was excluded. So Ravi will recognise this sort of pattern. And that, of course, also disobeyed the coroner's orders. The coroner subsequently rejected the report, but it was still presented to the bereaved family as being accurate. In the meantime, I finally broke ranks and I went to the CQC. So the retaliation was virtually immediate. My pay was cut, I was demoted, disciplined, threatened with impossible timetable changes, and unknown to me, reported to both the GMC and the police in retaliation for my whistleblowing, and finally threatened with an additional retrospective pay cut. So with £35,000 of earnings already missing, I resigned, and I spent the rest of 2016 unemployed. Ironically, having just won Morecambe Bay's Doctor of the Year award. So in 2017, I managed to find work on the Isle of Man. And for the next 6.5 years, I lived alone in a small rented bedsit there, whilst my wife kept the family going in Lancaster. The case went to litigation in 2018. And I can only describe this as being like taking on the mafia in a Sicilian court in the 1970s. So evidence was withheld, false and malicious counter-allegations were made, the previous head of department was ordered to stand down from giving evidence, and his witness statement withheld, and all my other trust witnesses dropped out after being told that their department might be dissolved if the case went badly. Then, with just days left, I was hit with a costs threat of £108,000 if I didn't shut my case down and agree to a gag. So against the odds, I did win unfair constructive dismissal, but with no urology witnesses left, the tribunal preferred the NHS manager's explanation that the illegal dismissal of their Doctor of the Year was due to junior management errors. The fact that the punishments all began within days of my whistleblowing being discovered was conveniently ignored. So due to a legal costs cap, I was awarded £102,000 for estimated lifetime costs of around £250,000. Importantly, precisely no attention was given to Peter Reid, the still disobeyed coroner's orders, or the ongoing patient safety risks. And I was so angry about the hypocrisy, the untrue counter-allegations, and the cover-ups that I decided I'd write a book about it. So, Whistle in the Wind was published on Amazon in the summer of 2019, and I believed I'd finally got the true story into the public domain, backed by the bereaved family and the tribunal's legal bundle of evidence. I thought that would be the end of it. Well, I couldn't have been more mistaken. So, it's selling over 10,000 copies with questions in the House of Commons and pressure for a full independent inquiry. A review was finally announced in late 2019. And this was a very double-edged sword for me, and far from being independent, was actually carried out by private investigators directly contracted to the NHS. Nevertheless, it did profoundly vindicate my whistleblowing, revealing an astonishing 72 areas of concern and over 520 avoidable cases of harm, including, of course, that of Peter Reid. However, there was a near lethal backlash for me personally. Just as the inquiry began, I received this anonymous warning. So I'd made powerful enemies. There was tampering with evidence, and there was a desire to see me in prison for my whistleblowing. So I should have been a lot more wary when I was suddenly summoned to an urgent Teams meeting with the NHS private investigators in late summer 2020 and presented with these two emails. Dated late December 2014, they profoundly reversed the narrative over Peter Reid's death, implying that I'd somehow predicted Peter's deterioration in advance of the weekend, illogically ruled out emergency weekend surgery, but then had taken over his emergency care on the Monday when I wasn't on call and in a different hospital. Well, my immediate gut reaction was that these were fakes, but I was worn down, almost it felt groomed, into admitting that I'd apparently behaved in a negligent fashion. And it wasn't long before the emails and my, quote, confession were in the hands of the GMC. This being the 7th time that I'd been reported from within Morecambe Bay and my 3rd major fitness to practice investigation. It seemed for a while likely to develop into a full-blown manslaughter and perjury case, with me, of course, having already admitted my apparent guilt. So already exiled from family and friends and facing criminal allegations and possible state prosecution, I was for some months a major suicide risk. I'm sure you've spotted the similarities to the post office scandal. Well, the first cracks in Morecambe Bay's new IT evidence against me appeared late in 2020. So I'd phoned the bereaved family to confess my guilt over this new evidence of Peter Reid's possible manslaughter at my hands and to discharge my duty of candour to them. To my surprise, Peter's family were not furious, but profoundly puzzled over new evidence of events that they didn't remember or recognise either. A couple of weeks later, they phoned back to explosively report that they'd requested all such evidence after the Employment Tribunal publicity in 2018, but neither of these emails had, according to the records, actually existed at the time. It was the following year, 2021, when I additionally discovered that not only had these emails been entirely absent from the IT records during the bereaved family searches, they'd also been absent when all the relevant NHS accounts were searched for the Employment Tribunal legal bundle in 2017, and even more damning still, had also been absent when the tribunal judge had formally ordered full disclosure of all evidence and documentation relating to Peter Reid. So it was just a year ago that the GMC again, and for the 7th time, rejected the NHS evidence and allegations against me and found no case to answer. By this time, it was also clear that the absence of these 2014 emails from the Trust's IT records in 2018 had also been withheld from the GMC as well. Curiously, the GMC also found the email of the 29th in one account filed as received on the 26th, 3 days before the events had actually taken place. Overwhelmingly powerful evidence of backdating. Well, long before the GMC's latest exoneration of me, it was clear that my old trust would not allow me to continue working even in exile. It's a unique medical vulnerability that we can all be maliciously reported any number of times to the GMC. We can't resist, as such referrals attract absolute privilege. And a malicious operator can carry on with multiple false accusations until they find a weak spot or the doctor or regulator makes a mistake. It's an extreme form of multiple jeopardy, and it motivated me sufficiently to write a second book, Smoke and Mirrors, which was published in late 2021. So with self-evidently, I believe, backdated and invalid evidence having appeared, leading to formal criminal allegations against me, with an admission by myself at one point of guilt, and with the overwhelming likelihood of further malicious actions exploiting the GMC's fondness for persecuting whistleblowers, and with my solicitors describing me as a sitting duck, there was only one safe option left, and that was to resign and erase myself from the profession. So what are the take-home messages from this? Well, firstly, it is truly astonishing how much hate, hypocrisy, and bigotry is inflicted on NHS whistleblowers. If individuals who are, say, disabled, minority religion, or transgender, for example, were picked out and specifically targeted for such extreme prejudice, abuse, and harassment, then there'd be national outrage, and rightly so. Yet, we have a huge national blind spot for such crude hatred and harassment when it is inflicted on a whistleblower and their family, particularly when that prejudice originates from within our own national favourite child, the NHS, an organisation unsurpassed for public virtue signalling, yet just like the post office, capable of the most appalling private acts of ignorance, intolerance, and dishonesty. Secondly, it's equally astonishing how the state system colludes to destroy any whistleblower who might be seen as a reputational risk. The NHS itself is truly notorious for such actions. The GMC continues to needlessly persecute whistleblowers on behalf of NHS executives. The CQC turns a blind eye, and of course, the legal and investigatory processes are abused and weaponized to place the whistleblowers themselves on trial. And all the time, the original clinical concerns and cover-ups go entirely unaddressed. So, my friends and ex-colleagues now, this will be my last appearance at BAUS, but I hope that you'll heed my warnings and support Ravi and myself and others in pushing for change that will make our generation the last medical generation to be subject to such appalling whistleblower witch hunts and such truly medieval levels of state-sponsored hate, bigotry, and retaliation, simply for being what we are, doing our job and discharging our clinical and professional responsibilities. In the meantime, please never forget that when it comes to candour, speaking up, which you must, and clinical safety, your own most cunning and ruthless enemy may by far, and despite all the promises to the contrary, prove to be your very own employer. Thank you very much.